So, welcome back to Think Differently. So good to see everybody. Today we're talking about consistency. Specifically, today's title is how to create consistent results that you can count on. And I talked a little bit about this in the email that I shared when I was sort of promoting this today. But I think that consistency in action is just something that gets really, really misunderstood, really, really misapplied, and talked about, I think, in a confusing way. I think it's something that if you've been in the online space for at least 6 months, you've seen people marketing around consistency and how that is what creates consistent results in business. Meaning your consistent action. And what I want to talk about today is what does that actually mean? What's the truth and what's the myth? And how do you actually apply it? Now, obviously, I'm not coaching everybody one-on-one here today, so I'm gonna try to give you some concepts and then let you take that and apply it directly to your business. Because how you apply this is actually really the key. The key is to apply it in the right way in your business, not to just, and this is where I think it gets confusing, because I think what a lot of people do is they think they understand it and then they just sort of apply it to everything. And it just gets really messy. So consistent results come from consistent action. And I even said in the email, like, I'm just annoyed by everybody saying, like, just be consistent. Like, oh, okay. That's what'll change everything in my business. I just need to be consistent. Great. Let me go take action on that thing. That sounds so simple. And so then when I can't, or if I can't execute on that, or if I can't execute consistently, whatever I think consistently means, then I think I'm doing it wrong. And I think it just gets misunderstood, misapplied, miscommunicated. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions as we go. So what I think a lot of times people think consistency means, let me actually back up. So I do believe, I don't just believe, I think it's fact that when we are consistent in our actions in business, that helps create consistent results. But that alone does not help create consistent results, or that alone does not create consistent results. And what that means, what it means to have consistent action in your business is what is, I think, misunderstood. So the concept here, or what I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that you can, like, sit on your couch and eat chocolate and paint your toenails and magical clients will float into your business, right? We do have to take action, and we do have to ideally take consistent action, but what that means and how you apply that advice to your business is what we're talking about today, because that's where I think everything gets confusing, oversimplified, misunderstood, bastardized, jaded, however you want to say it. So what I think people think that means, I'm going to just start with that. What I think people think it means, what I know people think it means, because my clients bring this to me all the time, is some version of discipline, hustle and grind, like the perfect time blocked and perfect time management schedule with perfect time blocks, and that you just follow everything per this rigid structure. That's what's going to make you consistent, and that's what's going to make you consistent results. Not necessarily. Again, there are pieces of this that are true, but they are not the only factor. And two, we have to understand how to apply these in a way that makes sense in the business. And I think it also speaks to the perfectionism mentality that is rampant in our society, that most people have, especially entrepreneurs, have grappled with at some level, in some way, shape, or form, in their previous careers, or in business, where it's sort of like, great, give me the perfect formula, I'll follow it, and then that'll create the business that I want. And that just doesn't, again, that alone just doesn't do it. And also, when we think that consistent action equals things like You have to post every single day on social media, or you have to post a certain number of times per week, or if you post, you have to do it in this way, right? We get sort of wrapped around the axle around the specifics and the rigid structure, thinking that that's consistency. And while it can be, that kind of consistency doesn't necessarily create results. I'm going to talk a lot more about this. What was the other thing I wanted to say before I jumped into some examples? I think the other thing, the sort of metaphor, or I guess this isn't really a metaphor, but it's more like something that this reminds me of, is New Year's resolutions, right? So we are at the moment in November. If you're watching the replay, this is being recorded at the beginning of November. So New Year's resolutions are going to be a hot topic soon. A lot of my clients are already planning for the new year. My business is planning for the new year as well. And when we think about New Year's resolutions, right, like it's so easy to get caught up in it all and to like spend days and hours coming up with like these 40-point plans of resolutions and what that's going to look like. And, you know, I'm going to post every day on social media, even on my vacation. And I'm being silly, right? But I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to work out even if it's like, I'm going to work out 5 times a week. You know, so one, like we sort of add these like reps in that may or may not, depending on your lifestyle, be realistic. And also we want to go from 0 to 100. We want to go from 0, never working out, you know, all year, to on January 1st, I'm going to magically start working out 5 days a week, which like usually lasts about 20 days. And so I think that consistency in the way that it's discussed in the online space is confusing like that. Like, yes, you don't need New Year's resolutions, but like, yes, that's a great idea. That's a great concept. People like words of the year. Like, I think it's really helpful to have a goal and a focus, and things that you want to create for yourself. So all of those are good, but the way that we go about it can be kind of messed up. Right? And then we just use it to make ourselves wrong, right? Well, okay, I clearly don't have discipline because I can't keep to this ridiculous, impossible schedule that I set for myself after the month of January, right? And same goes for business. So I just want to kind of encourage you to think about it like that, because I think we've all kind of gotten stuck in that trap, and then used it to weaponize ourselves, or used it to make ourselves wrong with New Year's resolutions. So same kind of goes for business here. The point here is not the number of reps, or the number of times you post, or the number of times you go to the gym. The point is, if you have like a health goal for the new year, the point is to be a healthier person. The point is you probably have a specific health goal in mind. That's the point, right? The reps and the numbers just are what you think is going to get you there. And again, it's not that if I lift weights, I won't, like, let's say my goal is to build muscle mass and to be stronger, physically stronger, then yes, part of that is to consistently and regularly go to the gym and lift weights and have some sort of structure to that, right? And when we take it to the extreme of the perfectionism and the over-structured and overly rigid and overly repped, then that's where we sort of lose sight of the purpose. And I see this in business so often. Okay. So here's a couple of ways that I see this playing out. Some of these will resonate with you and some won't. So take what sounds like you and leave the rest. So one way is just taking this concept as it is in its oversimplified, overstructured way, and saying, okay, this means I have to hustle grind. This means I have to be disciplined, and that's the only way to get there. And let me just also say, I see so many really talented, or have heard and spoken to so many talented business owners and entrepreneurs who think that maybe they have ADHD, maybe they are more type B creative person. They think then that means they can't have success because that's not their way. And so even if they don't get pulled into it, they kind of, again, use it as a way to weaponize it against themselves, use it as a way to make themselves wrong. Whereas as a type B creative person. I have created consistency in my business, but I've had to find my way to do that. So again, the ways that it can get misapplied is like, you're great on the, like some people actually thrive in this way, right? They are great on execution. They're busy doing all the things. They make sure they put in their numbers of posts. They're doing all the right things that they've decided is in their structure and in their like number of reps and all of those things. But when we are too focused on that element of it, that doesn't mean that the actions that you're taking are creating results. And I think this is why this gets really confusing, because yes, at some point, like we need to put in a certain number of hours to generate traction and results. Like there is a point where we need to have the work and the reps and the things to generate results. And that there's a tipping point, so to speak, where that stops being the case and actually more creates just more work, doesn't necessarily create exponentially the same number of leads, the same number of leads. I'm just going to use that as the example, right? So that's not always the case. And that's where it can get confusing. And that's where I find that my clients who are scaling can get confused, because they're like, wait, the way I got here was to put in all that, and now you're telling me how to scale is to not do that? I'm sorry, my brain can't compute, right? Because the definition of scaling is not doubling up on your effort, right? It's looking for that exponential return, that compounded interest on your effort, right? It's what was the other example I wanted to use? It's bringing in more money with the same amount of effort or less, right? So that's where we start to get confused and think, okay, if I just do that, and that's where sometimes when clients are new to me and they first start working with me, they'll say like, I'm doing all these things. I have lists of all these things I'm doing. Why is it not working? Or why am I not generating the money that I should be? Like with these number of hours, I should be making triple what I'm making. What's missing? And it's because these number of hours or these tasks are not necessarily the things that your business needs, or they're not the things that are going to create the most traction and momentum and results in your business. So not doing the right things, doing too many things means that you can't get traction on the stuff that moves the needle the most. Your energy is dispersed. That's another one where I find like we even if you're executing beautifully, like if you're doing too many things, it's just, there's just only so many hours in the day and so many yous. Even if you have a team, there's just only so much you can do. And I'm finding, especially in 2025 and even in 2024, that the number of things that you're doing, so let's use social media as an example, like the number of platforms that you're on does not equal to your results. And if you have a big team and you've got space and capacity to repurpose things on multiple platforms, great. But if you are growing, if you're looking for your first 100K or your first 200K, if you are scaling, if you have yourself plus a small team, which is most of my clients, then multiple platforms is just, it kind of hits that tipping point of like, this is actually not worth your time. Even though it's very easy to think that more is better in that sense, it's just not the way it's working right now. It's actually not the way that that was never the fastest path. It's just that it was easier to repurpose across platforms in the past, and now the platforms are so different now that it just requires more time and more effort to create that traction. So it's always been a traction killer, but it's exponential now. And then the other way that I see this way playing out, if we're just kind of running at it and doing the things, and there's kind of like not a lot of strategy, not a lot of intention, or not a lot of results generated from these efforts, then the other thing that I see in this bucket is like, I'm really big actually on having some blinders on. But if you have your blinders on too strongly and you're not paying attention, I think that's what's happened in the last couple of years. The industry has changed so much. The algorithms on social have changed so much. The buyer's behavior has changed so much. And that change happened like in 23, 24. But now with everything that's going on in the world, that's changing again-ish. And so, or just sort of growing to be more of the same. And so if you're not paying attention to that, or you're not paying attention to your industry's changes, then those blinders and that copy paste and that ongoing just repeat without paying attention is, you're going to be missing something. And then all those efforts compound to also be kind of either to not have iterated and evolved along the way. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so one is that like I'm just this overly perfect, uber disciplined, I'm churning out all this stuff. If that's not creating results and you're giving it enough time, then this might be yours to pay attention to, because you're probably applying that concept of, oh, I'm just being consistent, right? But you're not necessarily being strategic, can we just say, or efficient. And if that's something that you want help with, that's something that I help my clients with all day, every day, taking that list of things and deciding what actually makes sense to focus on and what doesn't, based on your business. And the answer, like, I'm never going to say like right now, like, oh, let go of YouTube or let go of blah, blah. Like, there are some trends and some things. I just made YouTube up, like, please keep YouTube if that's your preferred platform. But everybody's business is different, and I think it's really, really important to recognize that like the answer or the actual change that you need to make needs to be specific to your business. So that's why I'm not going to tell you what to do here, unless I get to coach you and get to know you and your business specifically. So one is that like overly perfect scheduled, you're just doing, and it's not going anywhere. That can be one way we misapply this. The other way I see is similar, right? It's the doing, but I call this like the sprint crash cycle. So you're doing, and then like it's just not possible for you to keep that up, right? Kind of like at the end of January, it's not possible to keep up your resolutions, and so then you crash, right? That's where it's like, I'm trying to be consistent. I am being consistent, but I cannot consistently be consistent. I cannot be consistent on a sustainable basis in a long-term way. And so then I crash. And what I see is that plays out in a couple of ways. One, it could be just your work style, workflow, work pace. But I see that a lot. We talked about this with the masterclass back in September. I see this happens a lot with offers. Oh, okay, I can't consistently deliver this offer or promote this offer in this way, or I can't consistently deliver on this strategy. Because I think that it needs to be this, you've gone too hard, right? So therefore I can't consistently deliver on it. So I have to go back to the drawing board and start over. New offer, new strategy. Sprint crash often also includes like, well, if you're posting on social media every day, right? Dramatically, you do not need to post on social media every day. But let's say you are, and that's what you think consistency is, and then you can't keep it up, and so then you crash, and then you don't post for a month, right? That's going to make it harder to create consistent results than if you had just taken those 30 posts and spread them out, right? With some consistency and been able to do some engagement, and as an example. So that sprint crash, right? If you just imagine like the daily, or the, let's just say like the by the minute, by the hour, some of the stocks, if you look at the line on the graph, like it kind of does that. If your work pace looks like that, obviously you're not consistent. But I think, and of course micro, like we have seasons for sprints and seasons for more rest, and that needs to be normalized. But when we're constantly up and down, or we're not planful about that, right? That's where consistency is just not an option, right? And that's where I think a better definition for consistency, consistent action is helpful, but I think rather than putting all these sort of structures and expectations that are perfect with like all the, I just keep imagining like the 14 reps thing, rather than looking at it that way, I think it's more helpful if we look at it as, what can I execute on consistently, sustainably, right? So what can I do over time in the long run? What can I do? As opposed to, well, I'll just do all the things, right? Because that actually, and again, that satisfies our like hit our need to feel like we're doing something. And this isn't to say please don't do any, like not to do anything. This isn't to say that you don't need action. You need action. You need a lot of action, frankly, to create results. But the way that we approach it can be different. So that's the other way I see it play out. Let me just look at my examples here. And what happens when we do this is we're mistaking that consistency for perfection, right? And we're also, for the example of the offers, I didn't get to this because I think I beat the dead horse or hit you guys over the head with it at the masterclass. But I think when we find ourselves, if you find yourself changing your offers over and over and over again, waiting to see what sticks, waiting to see what your people need, waiting to see what's going to work, that alone, one, will burn you out. If you didn't attend the masterclass, let me know. I'll send you a copy of the replay. But it also happens because people misunderstand how long it takes to get proper data to say, oh, okay, this isn't working. Let me go back to the drawing board. And by the way, please, when you find that something doesn't work, unless you just hate your offer or hate your strategy or hate whatever, like the answer doesn't need to be go back to the drawing board. The answer needs to be, great, what do we need to do? What tweaks do we need to make to make it work? And so I think it's that philosophy that can really spin people out too. And so then when we do all these things, right, I think I've painted an obvious picture, but what happens when we do all these things? It kills traction, right? We are so busy and we think what in the world, why is it not giving us what we want? But it's because we're not doing the right things, because all the things that we've just talked about, right? So the results are of this like crappy this like misunderstood consistency definition. The results are actually the opposite of consistent results, right? You want more money in your business. This can actually make your revenue go down. This can actually put you at an income ceiling. I have seen so many people trying to scale and I always do this, like they keep hitting their head on the income ceiling for where they are because there's not enough hours in the day and they're executing on the things that don't necessarily move the needle. And they're just stuck, right? They're stuck at that level until they make a change. This can be one of those sort of approaches where that's why you're getting stuck. It definitely creates inconsistent results. So I mean inconsistent in terms of your revenue, inconsistent in terms of your energy levels, in terms of how close you are to burnout, inconsistency. Oh my God, it's also so hard on your team. I think this is not talked about enough of what happens with your team when you change things a lot, when you sprint crash, when they are trying to keep up with that, versus when you have a strategy that you can consistently execute on, that they just know what to do. Great example, I had the other day, I had something happen and I missed something and my VA noticed it because we do the same thing every week, right? So that was my job, it was my responsibility. She was bonusing by noticing it, but I missed something and she picked it up because it's just consistent. And that just enables her to support me more, enables me to lean into that support. It's a tiny thing, but it's not a tiny thing because that's how we keep things moving. When everything depends on one person in this example, like that's not sustainable. That I cannot be 100% consistent all the time. I'm a human. So it kills your traction or it slows your traction. It slows your revenue growth, or it keeps you at a plateau, hitting that head on the ceiling, or it can decrease your revenue, or it can make your revenue inconsistent, which I think is incredibly nervous system jarring. And it can lead you on a path to burnout, and then it can also affect your team. So I'm going to get into a couple things that you can do. The first one is looking at it differently. We often think, and this is like, again, I'm just going to stick with the New Year's resolutions because I think it's so easy. We often think that okay, if I want to be healthier, I need to do 75 things and I need to do, we think that the answer to all of our problems is some big thing, some big action in business. I'll give you a great example. I am having my it's going to be a toss-up. It's either my best year ever or my second best year ever. Last year was my second best year ever in business in 8 years. And I've already surpassed that revenue this year. But I haven't quite surpassed the revenue for my best year ever. So it's going to be neck and neck. And I shared that with my audience, and I got so many people going back saying to me like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" And my answer is like, and that's a fair question, right? But my answer is like nothing different. That's actually the point. The point is I have compounded effort. I've compounded all my efforts and my results to making it easier on me. Yes, I make tweaks and adjustments all the time, but like for the most part, I've had the same offer. For the most part, I've had for the most part the same strategy. I don't think my strategy's changed much, hardly at all, in the last 3 years. And so I think it's just really important to see, like, we think the big results come from something big, but the big results come from just ongoing, actual consistency, sustainable consistency. I post like twice a week. And it's really, so my point is here, if you want an example or a way to think about it, I kind of label this like the macro versus the micro. We think big results come from macro things. And look, they absolutely can. I do think there's like big decisions to make sometimes in business. And I do think that there is a time and a place for a pivot or a big change. Love having my clients through those decisions. But most of the time, that is not the answer. And most of the time, that is the thing that will slow you down. Most of the time, we just need to make a tweak. Most of the time, what we really need to do is just keep executing on our strategy, keep doing the same stuff over and over and over, and letting that focal point, again, not in the way that I said earlier around just copying and pasting and having your blinders on, but keep doing the same thing over and over again with tweaks and refinements, because you get enough data over time to keep knowing what to tweak and in which way, so that you just keep getting better and better and better at it, instead of executing on something, wearing yourself out, and starting over on some new strategy or some new offer. And now your audience has to catch up on, what did she do again, right? So the example that I like to use for macro versus micro, because everybody knows that this is what works, right? We just don't think it works in other areas of life, is think about the professional athlete. So like a basketball player is just like, what do they do at practice? They do very simple, boring things like shooting foul shots. They just shoot foul shots over and freaking over and over and over and over. Tennis players, serve, 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 serve. Take a break. Serve, 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 right? They know how to serve. They know how to shoot foul shots. It's not that. It's about maintaining those muscles. It's about, refining and getting better and better. It's about keeping in the rhythm and the practice of it. It's about the more you do, the better you get. Right? Same with reaching out and following up with your sales pipeline. Same with posting on social media. Same with having a sales call. The more sales calls you have, the better you get at converting them. And the better you get at noticing, who isn't a good match for you. And so if it's helpful, remind yourself that the truth is the big results come from so many of the like really boring, uninteresting things, like the daily, weekly, monthly things that you have on repeat. Again, that's real consistency, but consistency that's sustainable. If you're putting in the reps, right? If you take your vitamin every day, you're not going to notice in the first few weeks, right? But you might notice if you stop taking it for 3 months, right? That's how your pipeline works too. And again, I think that consistency thing, we get kind of all New Year resolution-y about it, right? And we want to run at something, and we think macro, we think big, we think we think massive lists, we think change your strategy, change your offer, add more things on top, right? And the truth is, what actually gets you there is finding a strategy that you can execute on consistently, doing the work that you enjoy doing, which is why I have a one-on-one offer instead of a group. Putting in the reps, getting to be known for something. That is like a thing that just exponentially over time is helping me. It makes my life easier. It makes it easier for me to sell over time. Yeah, and it's the daily, weekly actions, the consistency, it's the building up little by little by little by little by little, and nobody wants to hear this because everybody wants results like this, right? And you can also get results like this. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen fast, but it also doesn't come from some big dramatic change or adding 47 things to your plate. The fastest way to your next client is not adding 47 things to your plate. It's getting better at the pieces of your business that need your attention. So if you've got a bunch of people in the pipeline and you are looking to make some more sales, they are sitting right there. You don't need to go after leads right now. You need to nurture and convert the people that are sitting in your pipeline waiting to be sold to. That's your focus. And so whatever you need to execute there, right? Doesn't mean don't also go get leads, but that's just not the number one problem in your business, right? If you have the opposite example and you've got a very tiny pipeline and you don't have a lot of calls coming in and you don't know, feel like I don't know who my next client's going to be, but I feel like I could probably name 5 to 10 people and tell you and be right, or be right, they'll be the next like 2 to 3 of my next clients. And so I think to give you that perspective, that's really helpful. So let me back up. So if you don't have that people in the pipeline, then your best time and focus is going to be on focusing on getting leads, as an example. So doing the right actions, understanding what your business needs and doing that, and then finding the consistency and the sustainability within that. So that's what I want to talk about next. Let me know if you have questions. So how do you create something that's sustainable and consistent? One is something that I talk about all the time. If you're in my world and you've been in my world for a while, you probably already know this. Good chance you already do this, but this is where I think it's important to start. And it's very simple, and you might be annoyed that it's very simple. But there's no secrets here. If the work you're doing, and by work, I mean like the work itself, like for me, it's coaching. For someone else, it's web design. For someone else, it's accounting, whatever. The work that you're doing, if that isn't aligned to something that you just want to keep doing over and over and over again, then that's the place to start. If something's wrong with the work itself, everything else that you do is rarely, it's going to be really hard for that to feel sustainable. It's going to be really hard for you to execute on it consistently because you kind of don't want to do it. Right? So let's build our business around work that we want to do. I want all these clients to come in so that I can serve them because I just want to coach all day, right? So the work itself needs to be aligned to something that you want to do. And your strategy, your marketing strategy, so whether that's social media, whether that's networking, whether that's speaking, whether that's posting in Facebook groups, whether that's your podcast, whatever it is, whatever you offer and whatever you go after in terms of your strategy, however you market your business. And I'm not saying you have to love marketing. My clients always tell me they hate marketing, but you don't have to love it. But the setup, and I'm always asking clients like how they feel about certain things. You don't have to love every piece of it, but if it's not aligned to your work style, your personality, the work that you do, right? If I did a bunch of like group, I don't know, that's not a good example. Let's say I did a bunch of like, no, that's not a good example either. Anyway, let me keep going. So we want to align it to the work itself. We want to align your strategy to your personality, to your work style, to your clients, right? So let's say I served busy moms. Doing like a 5-day challenge and asking them to show up every 5 days is like really, that's not aligned, right? That's just, they're too busy. That's the whole point, is they're too busy. So I would need to put something together that gave them something they felt like they could show up for, right? Versus like just adding to the fuel to the fire. Oh, here's another thing I didn't show up for, right? So everything needs to be aligned in your strategy as well. And it doesn't need to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be like, again, it just doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be something that you can consistently show up for, which gets me to my next piece. When we talk about consistency, if it's going to be sustainable, it has to account for you being a human. So again, as I said a minute ago, it's got to match your style. It's got to fit you, right? So, like if you don't like speaking in front of people and you don't have any interest in getting, like a lot of people have a fear of public speaking. I worked with a public speaking coach when I first started my business. It was very, very helpful. But I knew I wanted to do public speaking. I just wanted to be like, I needed the support. I'm public speaking right now. But if you hate that, and that's not something you want to get better at, like we are not putting you on podcasts. We are not asking you to go out and do speaking events. Like there's plenty of other strategies that you could pick. There's so many options. You don't have to do that. Like there's no one strategy that's better than the other. It's just the fit. All strategies work. It's just about the fit. And so finding what fits you best, and then strategically making sure that strategy also doesn't just fit you, like, and is fun. Like I could go out and do all these speaking events, but if I'm not speaking at the right places, then I'm not generating clients either, right? So we need to have some other strategy components in there. But if it's not aligned, it's not going to be something you can show up for. And so the way that I kind of like to think about this is everything that you do in your business, I like to think about it from the lens of what about the days that I'm not 100%? I've had a lot of I've had a minor health issue this year. I won't get into the details, but it has really affected the way that I work, and it's affected my energy levels. And one of the things that has been really, like, I've just been so proud of myself and grateful to past me about in past years is I have a business that doesn't ask me to be somebody that I'm not, and that on my tired days, it's still just not hard and still such a joy to show up for my clients. Like if I had to go same amount of energy, same amount of low energy, right? I had a dip earlier this week. If I had yesterday, if I had my corporate job that I had to go to, I would have had to cancel my whole week. I did not have energy to do 5 minutes of work in my old corporate job, but I had the energy, the same amount of energy applied to this business because I've set it up in a way that is just supportive and enjoyable to me. I don't need to be, it's just easy for me to show up for my business. And it doesn't mean that like certain things didn't get taken off my plate, and like I have taken things off my calendar this week, but the point is, the business is not built around me being 100% all the time. And this year has been such a great sort of evidence of that. And it's also helped me let go of some other things that I was doing that just weren't moving the needle as much, and I just didn't have the energy for, and it was a no-brainer to drop them this year. So think about that. Like on the day, when you have a cold and you're not super sick, you don't need to be in bed all day, but like you definitely don't feel 100% and you're not going to go full force. That's been the vibe that I've had to manage. So like think about it that way. When you feel like that in between, is your business set up to let you be that way? Right? And of course, when you're really sick, please take time off. This isn't about that. But so if your business accounts for you not being 100%, if it accounts for you actually being sick and you have space for that, if it accounts for you to be able to take vacation, right? If you're, one of my clients is a web designer, and one of the things we're working on right now is setting up the structure of the process that her clients go through, where they work on something and they give it to her for the website, she puts it on the website, sends it back to them for feedback. That whole process, we've been working on building, what that process looks like, or refining. She already has a process. We're refining it because it was too tight and it didn't account for time off, vacations. It sort of pushed these deadlines back up against each other. So if one person missed a deadline, like the whole schedule got blown up, and there was no buffer or space for that, or vacations, or for somebody to be sick, or what have you, right? And so what we're doing is we're building in extra time and really deciding what needs to happen when. So we want to build that in, right? We want to build that in versus like, well, I have to work 52 hours for 52 weeks of the year in order to make the revenue that I said I wanted to make. Like, that's not a good plan. That's not a good plan at all. Right, so how many weeks do you want to take vacation? And like, let's build that in. Is it built for slower seasons? Is it built for rest and recovery? Like we talked about, like the sprint crash cycle that some people can find themselves in. I want to be clear, like, if that's your pattern all the time and you don't know when it's going to happen, because you don't know when you're going to crash after a sprint, or you're not willing to name a sprint as a sprint, right? Then that's the quote problem that we're talking about. However, sprint crashes can happen, or sprints, mini sprints can happen in seasons. There's definitely seasons of sprinting, and there's definitely seasons of more resting and kind of everything in between. But the assumption of a sprint, like by definition, is that it's short and you stop, right? And you rest and then come back to like whatever your medium paced whatever is. And so again, fine to have those mini sprints, perfectly fine, so long as they are built in and planned for. But is your business set up to support that? And then the buffers that we talked about, right? Buffers and deadlines, like what's your response time to clients? Is your response time to clients expecting that that you're always perfect, right? That you're always responding every single day to every single client with no space and no buffer? Are your deadlines built like that? Is your even in the execution of your planning? So I'll give you another example in my business, very, very simple, but we generally send out emails on Tuesdays and Fridays. And sometimes I don't have my content ready by Tuesday. It just depends on the week. And so when that's the case, when I don't have it ready by Tuesday, we just send it out on Wednesday. Like, it's just built in. The expectation is built in. And when we don't have it by Wednesday, we just don't send it out, and we send one on Friday instead. Like we have like that little contingency plan. And again, my VA knows that that's how it goes, so she knows what to expect, right? That is so soothing, right? And then let me go back to like what we mean by consistency in this example. I'll just use myself as an example. If I send 2 emails a week most of the time, my consistency commitment to myself is on average of 1 to 2 per week, right? So if I am on vacation, I'm allowed to skip a week. If I'm on vacation, I'm allowed to send 1. I'm allowed to send allowed to for my own self. I make my own rules. I let myself send only 1. If I'm on vacation, I let myself skip. For sure, over the holidays when I'm on vacation and my VA's on vacation, we're going to send, maybe 1 or 2, or maybe we'll just take the 2 weeks off. I haven't decided yet, but that's something that I allow for. And therefore, over the course of the year, if I average 1 to 2 per week, I've met my consistency goals. So again, it allows for space for me to take time off. It allows for, I think when I had a sale going on in September, I had a masterclass and then I had a sale right off of that. Somewhere in there, I think we sent 3 emails in a week or 2. So it allows for that too, right? Like, it allows for that spaciousness, but it also has the consistency. And your numbers may be different. Please don't copy those numbers. Those numbers are what works for my business. But that allows for the consistency that we're talking about. That's actually consistent. That's actually something I can do consistently. So the work itself and the strategy is aligned. This is how you create actual consistency, which is sustainable consistency. Building in structures that account for atypical things, atypical weeks, atypical months, you being off, a client being off, all the deadline crunchy things that we talked about. And then the other big piece that I want to talk about here is support. If you don't have support in your business, or if your support doesn't feel supportive, right? If you have team members in place, but it doesn't feel supportive for you because either you're just going to take something back if it's not done perfectly, or they aren't good at supporting you, or whatever the reason is. There's oftentimes one of the things I'm always talking with clients about is like how to support your team, how to get the most out of your team, how to lean into that support, how to support your team. And then how to know when it's not the right fit. So support can be a team, support can be a coach, support can be systems and processes, right? If you don't have some of those things in place to support the business, it makes it really hard to be consistent, to create consistent results, because your actions then become kind of wonky. Like, the actions are not consistent. And again, this doesn't mean full rigidity. This does not mean every single week is exactly the same, and on Wednesdays I post these kinds of posts, and on Fridays I post these. It doesn't need to be like that. But when we don't have consistency in the back end of the business, behind the scenes, the shit people can't see, right? Like how your client onboarding process works, how work gets done behind the scenes, like my handoffs between myself and my VA, who's responsible for what, having systems and processes for your clients to reach out and get support. All of those things contribute to the business having that solid foundation of consistency. Again, it doesn't mean, posting every single day, but if you have that set up, and that takes time, and give yourself time. It's not like you need to have everything perfect before. Please, for my perfectionists and my operations people, please don't think that means now you have to have everything perfect before you can move forward. But build it as you go. Those things create such, I'm just going to keep coming back to nervous system regulation. Those things create such a calming, steady feeling in your business, reality and feeling, practically speaking and emotionally, that it enables you to keep going with the consistency, right? Because your energy and your time is spent more efficiently. You're not always recreating the wheel of oh no, I have a new client, so let me make sure I give them this and this. No, I just have a checklist and I do the thing and it's just done. I don't have to think hard on that. I can just do that. And then I can save my thinking hard for serving the actual client in front of me. I can save my thinking brain for putting out good content. I can save my thinking brain for what topic am I going to present to you guys here. And so that's where I feel like the support piece is important. Or how it plays in. And I think it's also, I've actually had a brand new client come to me, just started working with me. And one of the things that we talked about in her discovery call was this concept of feeling like she should be able to do it all on her own. And she's overwhelmed and she needs support and wants support, and it's time and she's ready and her business is ready for it and all of the things. But but the point being here is that's actually what's going to give her that consistency, right? Being able to have a coach who she can lean into support emotionally for the mindset piece, who she can lean into for the strategy tweaks that she needs to make, where she knows a lot and knows her business really well, but I can see the forest for the trees, and together we can really set her on a good path for the next step, as opposed to her just muscling through, right? And muscling through and DIYing too much and being, I've written a lot of content about this recently, but or for years now, about being independent. If you're like me, your independence is both your superpower and your greatest, what's your kryptonite, right? It's also the thing that holds you back when you take it too far, right? Me being independent in this business is what's gotten me here. And me being too independent in this business is what will wear me out and what will keep me from my next goal, right? So my job is to stay with the good, right? Use the force for good in my independence, and to keep doing my work while also leaning into the team that I have of support of my VA and a couple other team members and my coach. And so I think that is really, really important here. This is why coaching is so helpful, you coaches. This is why whatever support if you support business owners, this is a really great place to speak to in your content, in your sales calls, around how that it's not you have to be consistent before you then bring on your VA. It's bring on your VA to help you get consistent. Does that make sense? You don't need to create consistent results so that you can have a coach. You can hire a coach so that you can create consistent results, right? Okay, and then the final piece I want to say here is mindset, right? And so much of this, we've talked about it already. I've sort of sprinkled in the mindset throughout. But I think what I really just want to say here is when we're looking at creating more consistent results, yes, having more consistent action creates those consistent results. But now that we sort of defined what that is and what that isn't, I hope that that helps. But I think the mindset piece here, or the perspective to take should you choose to accept it, is you're playing the long game. Like consistency and sustainability, if you want consistent income, that's not, I want a pop month, right? Like pop months are great. I'm all about pop months. But what I care about the most is the consistency in my business. What I care about for my clients is not just that they have a pop month, but that they have more than enough money coming in every month to pay the bills, to cover the overflow, to bring them amazing savings, to use that money for the things they want to spend their time and money on, to donate to good causes, whatever it is that they want. I want them to have that consistently over and over again and know where the next one's going to come from, versus a pop month that oftentimes is, if it's not like a launch or something like that, that was already planned for and strategized for, that you then go, well, I don't know what created that, right? Versus consistency, that you know what creates it and you know what to do and you know where to go. And so all that is to say, the mindset here is a long game mindset. It doesn't mean that you can't create results now. It doesn't mean that you can't have a pop month. It doesn't mean that you have to wait 6 months for your results. 100% no. You can absolutely have results now. But when we have a long game mindset, we're just more likely to, in those moments that I said, like we're sprinting and crashing, or we're like running at an offer and then we get tired and then we think it's not working. And so we go back to the drawing board. If you're playing the long game, if you're really playing the long game, not just in your heart, but if your mindset is that this is the long game, then you're much more likely to stay more neutral and to say, let me see why that didn't work. Let me decide if I want to keep this offer. Did I like this offer? Yes. Do I want to keep this offer? Yes. Okay, well then let me go figure out how to make it work. Instead of, shit, that didn't work, let me start over. Right? That's a short term, that's also a short term mindset. Or I need to hurry up and we're at November 6th, right? So if you have yearly goals that you want to hit and you're like running at those yearly goals because you really want to like make the last piece of the revenue that you want, like all about the momentary short term, that's great. That's a conversation I'm having with one client, and that's great. But if we're not also playing the long game, then that short term becomes your long game. Your long game, your pattern, your consistency, if you will, becomes the short term gain. And that's the opposite of sustainable and the opposite of consistency. You're consistently inconsistent, right? And so from a mindset perspective, really thinking about playing the long game also puts you in the position of answering some of these other questions, like, is the work I'm doing what I want to be doing? You don't have to marry it. You don't have to be with it forever and ever, but like for the foreseeable future, for the next couple of years, do you want to be doing this? Yes. Okay, then that's just going to make it easier for you to show up for it, which means you don't have to be 100% all the time. Okay, and so a couple other things that we've talked about already. A lot of times the big results come from these tiny actions, from these repeated actions, from the taking the vitamin everyday actions that seemingly in the moment don't give you the hit that you want. And so I think a lot of times the mindset piece here is, what do you believe? Like, do you really, and this is where I often will ask a client, like, do you believe this isn't going to work? Because if we believe something isn't going to work, we're not going to do it. Or we're not going to be able to do it sustainably. And so if you don't think something's going to work, that's your work, right? Either to recognize where it will work, or to be committed to deciding that it's going to work and to seeing that through. So I think the piece that I just want to say, I could do a whole live stream on this, but I think it's just really important to go back to the mindsets of playing the long game. That puts you in a space of, okay, what do I need to consistently execute on? Believing that the tiny actions actually create big results. And that's a big one for a lot of people. That's a really good journal prompt for you in terms of like, what do you actually believe is true here? Like, why, when you look at this list of things, do you believe that it won't work? And what would you like to believe instead? And then back to that, like, similarly, but like sometimes it's the stuff that seems boring and uninteresting, like shooting foul shots over and 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 over again, like serve, 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 serve on the tennis court. What are the pieces in your business that just are asking you to do that? And if you're a professional athlete, hopefully you love the game. And so while, yeah, there's days where you don't wanna, like there's days where you're tired and, you know, but like for the most part, you're like, yeah, I get to do this thing that I love. I'm happy to just go out and shoot 100 foul shots because I love the game. And on my worst days, the days that I'm only feeling 80% or 50%, it's not hard to shoot foul shots because it's just fine. And if it's a little boring, it's fine. You know what I mean? Again, so it doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to be in love with it every day and every minute. But when you get to that space, I think that's just what makes it easier. And so again, if your strategy doesn't feel remotely like that, if your work doesn't feel remotely like that, if your work doesn't feel remotely like that, that's a real time to reevaluate. I think if your strategy doesn't feel like that, that's something I would love, love, love to help you with, because I think that fit is really, really sometimes the game changer. It's not about, you know, you're doing the wrong strategy or this one doesn't work. It's about, there's some strategies out there that work really great. I would never be able to show up for consistently. Like it's just not my strategy. And so helping you find that match would be such a joy and such a pleasure. I'd love to help you. Okay, I think that's it. I have just one quick announcement, and that is I have one coaching spot left for the rest of the year. One. And I'm already talking to a few people about it. So if you are interested in working with me, now is the time to hop on a free call. I will put the link here in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, it'll be on the post. So now is the time to talk, and I just actually booked my first client for January. So January spots are now open. I'll take just a small deposit, depending, $250 if you're booking a 1 week intensive, or a $500 deposit if you're booking for the 6-month coaching partnership. So January booking is open now too. So if you are looking to knock things out of the park next year, I would love to support you. Hop on a free call and let's talk about what it would be like to work together. No pressure. I'll let you know if I don't think you're right, if I don't think that we would fit together. And just like we talked about, like you and your strategy, I think we have to fit together nicely too. So whether you're looking to build, grow, scale, hire on team members, pivot, whatever's going on in your business, I work with people at all stages, and I would love to help you. I think that now, and if you want the spot for now, I think now is a really great time, honestly, to jump in, because we can really set you up for next year versus like starting the changes next year. We could sort of, I don't know, I just think it's a really, really nice time. Q4 is a really, really great time to really dive in and figure out what's working and what's not, and really set the stage, and frankly go ahead and start executing, so that by January you already actually have some real data, and you already have some movement and some traction. Because I think this is a good time of year to be selling, especially if you've got like a Black Friday sale or something like that, or you've got some sort of like urgency of like people to sign up for the end of the year. So I still think this is a good time of year for you to be making money and to be selling things to your clients. And I think January is kind of like that, like late August, September timeframe where like people are just kind of ready to go. And so if your business is set up for them to be ready to go, it's just like makes life so much easier and can really help you like exponentially get traction on your results. So hop on a call with me. Let's talk about working together. Again, I have a 1 week intensive, and then I have a 6 month, which is my standard program, a 6 month program where everything's one-on-one, very high touch, lots of support in between. Would love to help you with these kinds of things. And if consistency doesn't feel like your thing, we can find a way to make that work for you. All right, my friends, I will be back in 2 weeks with another one, and I will see you soon.